Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming along to the Environmental Placement Programme Award ceremony. I'm so sorry about the 15-minute delay in getting everyone started and ready to go. As you can imagine, with a digital event, along with it, you always have some technical issues. So we're all here. Everyone is excited to get going. Thank you for your patience while we got started. We have a very exciting morning all about the accomplishments and achievements of our 5 finalists who were on placement in businesses and organisations across Scotland. Now, this event will be recorded and shared on social media, so if you need to leave for any reason, you will be able to catch up later on. The guests, you won't get to write any messages, or we won't be able to see you, so don't worry if you're not happy about being recorded. The finalists and our judges will be the ones that we'll hear from. So I'm Rachel, the business manager of Bright Green Business, and I'll be your host for today. I manage the environmental placement programme and other key services which help businesses in Scotland to become more environmentally sustainable. I also have here today, who is working hard behind the scenes, my lovely colleague, Karen Ritchie. Karen is the operations manager and oversees everything in Bright Green Business, as well as managing Bright Green Hydrogen, which is a hydrogen energy demonstration centre based in Methil, Fife. So, what is the Environmental Placement Programme? Well, it's EPP, as we like to call it, and it's supported by the Scottish Government and offers valuable and practical work experience opportunities for students and recent graduates by linking them with host companies to undertake environmental projects. Bright Green Business helps participating companies realise the cost savings associated with improved environmental management and helps them to keep up with the demand for greater corporate environmental responsibility. Now, the overall aims of the EPP are to 1. Increase awareness of environmental issues and promote the adoption of improved environmental practice. 2. Stimulate the links between students and graduates with business. 3. Provide valuable professional experience in the environmental sector in a supportive and managed setting. 4. Contribute to raising the youth employment rates in Scotland. And finally, help businesses meet their environmental targets, reduce cost, and boost their reputation. So, here is today's running order. This year, there will be 5 presentations from placements within Energy Saving Trust, the Scottish Government, Fife College Students Association, Mabbitts and Associates, and the 2050 Climate Group. Throughout the morning, participants will present their achievements to a panel of expert judges, and presentations will detail the project's aims, ambitions, challenges, and outcomes. And the winner will be awarded the Most Enterprising Environmental Intern 2020. Now, as you can see up on the top right corner of the presentation, we have a small image of our award for today. This has been made by Scott Irvin from the company Harmonies and Wood. Scott is based in Edinburgh and does an incredible job making these bespoke glass awards. So if you're listening, thank you, Scott. It looks lovely. The event will also include a presentation by Olivia Sweeney from Resource Futures. And finally, our Twitter handle is @ShadeGreener, and we're using the hashtag EPP Awards 2020. So please tag us and join the conversation. Now, I'd like to introduce everybody to our fantastic judging panel who are here with us today. Head judge on the top left is Fiona Forrest Anderson, Head of Employer Engagement at Edinburgh and Napier University. Napier are premier partners of the Mid and East Lothian Chamber of Commerce and Bright Green Business, and Fiona also joined the Chamber's board in 2020. Napier is a university who is committed to growing sustainability and has made the agenda of its strategic objectives. Napier has committed to take progressive action to achieve net zero in its operations by 2030 and will also seek to minimise its wider legacy carbon footprint and influence sustainable practices within and beyond its campuses. We also have here today David Hogg, a senior energy systems consultant at Arup. Prior to joining Arup, David created the Leavenmouth Community Energy Project with Bright Green Hydrogen, so we know David well. Since joining Arup, he has worked on key hydrogen projects throughout the UK and elsewhere, including the Scottish Government's Hydrogen Assessment Project and SGN's H100 project. Hello, David. And finally, we have Kevin Matthew. Kevin was the EPP winner in 2019 and is currently working at the Community Food Initiatives North East, a regional centre for Fair Share UK. The organisation aims to reduce poverty and food insecurity by redistributing surplus food to communities and charities. David works as a Fair Share Sustainability Development Officer, and the primary focus of his role is income generation across various activities and leading community project designed to strengthen organisational sustainability. Welcome, judges. I'm sure you'll have a very difficult job on your hands today. Now, the judges will be looking for the individual who has demonstrated the most creativity, energy and initiative in producing positive results for the host organisation. At the end of each presentation, the judges will also have the opportunity to ask each finalist a question. Now, without any further delay, I'd like to introduce you all to our finalists, the stars of the show. So we have Kathleen Painter, who was placed at Energy Saving Trust. Next up will be Rowan Stanford, who was placed at the Scottish Government. Then we'll have Lilith Cooper. Lilith was placed at Fife College Students Association. Then Spiros Anjali, who was placed at Mabbitt and Associates. And finally, we'll have Joe Cameron, who was placed at the 2050 Climate Group. All right, so let's get on with our presentations. So first up, we have Kathleen Painter. Kathleen, like I said, was placed at Energy Saving Trust, and she was the main part of her placement was focusing on coordinating the development of a new public-facing web tool. Kathleen, when you're ready, take it away. And remember to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this extremely biased and probably useless step-by-step guide on how to be a bright green business intern at Energy Saving Trust. Rachel, next slide. So in this guide, we will cover what you will learn about Energy Saving Trust, how to start your internship, more about the project you'll work on, and what outcomes you can expect. So let's get started. Next slide. So step one will begin while you are applying for your internship. Learn about Energy Saving Trust, or EST. Find out that EST is an organization striving to address the climate emergency through promoting energy efficiency, sustainable transport, and sustainable energy use in the home. You will be working mostly on the last part within the Scottish Home Renewables team, who are responsible for, among other projects, managing a number of online tools that help customers make decisions about their homes and their energy use. Learn very early on that it is Energy Saving Trust and not the Energy Saving Trust or Energy Savings Trust as you had previously thought. Next slide. So step 2 is optional. Immigrate with great trepidation from South Africa to Scotland and then complete your Masters in Environmental Sustainability at Edinburgh Napier University. The technical knowledge gained during your degree will help you with the work that you will do at EST, especially your experience with Standard Assessment Procedure, or SAP, which is used to energy rate buildings. The maths used in SAP will feature in the tool that you'll be working on, and name-dropping SAP in your interview might be part of the reason that you were chosen for the placement in the first place. The immigration part remains optional, but if you do choose to immigrate, do not forget to bring with you more plug adapters than you think a person could reasonably need. Next slide. So step 3, start your internship on the 10th of February 2020. Use your first day to familiarize yourself with the tool that you'll be working on, the Home Renewables Selector. This step is important because by day 2, you'll be writing text that features on the tool itself. The Home Renewables Selector is a complex interactive tool that helps customers find out what renewable energy technologies are suitable for their home and helps them decide which they should choose by showing calculations on how much money they could save and carbon emissions they could reduce by installing them. The Home Renewables Selector tool was designed to replace a couple of smaller tools on the EST website, like the Solar PV Calculator and the Wind Speed Predictor, and to combine them all into one to give customers a more holistic view of the renewable options they have for their home. You will play a key part in the end stages of development for the tool, getting it ready for launch. Make sure to also involve yourself in all other aspects of the renewables team work. Write case studies for green networks, draft briefing notes for a new loan scheme, encourage installers to join the RIF tool. Learn a few days in that this actually stands for Renewables Installer Finder and that your colleagues are not simply mispronouncing the word roof. Next slide. So step 4, become deeply familiar with the tool primarily through taking the lead on user testing. Email your willing participants a test version of the tool and record their feedback on a handy spreadsheet. Proceed to scour every inch of the tool yourself for spelling mistakes, logical errors, and inconsistencies. Compile all the feedback you have into a neat list of changes to be sent to the developer. Try not to cringe at the sheer number of changes that are needed. Your manager will call you the expert on the tool, although don't get excited. This does not mean a pay rise. With your newfound expert status, provide training to all specialist renewables advisors on how to use the tool. Prepare your presentation on the tool, practice what you would like to say, and then immediately get stumped by a question on why the tool uses a certain efficiency for heat pumps. Either way, complete the training session and feel a deep sense of pride that you are able to deliver training to the advisors after only a couple of weeks working with the tool. Ensure that you forget to record the training session, meaning you need to re-record it at a later date. Next slide. Step 5, enjoy the satisfaction of doing a job that both uses knowledge and skills acquired from your degree while engaging your want to do some good for the planet. Attend regular lunch and learn sessions and marvel at the fact that this is an opportunity you're given merely by working at EST. Have engaging discussions in the kitchen over lunch. If given the opportunity to attend training courses, jump at the chance. Travel to Stirling to take part in solid wall insulation training. Build on your knowledge of insulating traditionally constructed buildings and vow henceforth to never use the words hard to treat. Answer every "how long are you with EST?" question with the simple "not long enough." During your 3-month placement, the tool will attract almost 2,000 users, and you will become the go-to support for advisor queries on the tool. Your experience of managing this tool will help you in your future at EST. Next slide. Overall, you will be a positive contributor to the success of the Home Renewable Selector tool, which, as of yesterday, has attracted 9,033 users. Towards the end of your internship, you will apply for and receive a permanent role within EST as the program assistant for the Community and Renewable Energy scheme. This role will include working 1 day a week with your old team and mean that far beyond your original internship placement, you will still be involved in further developments of the tool that started it all. Through all this, keep an even keel and steady hand in everything you do. You may only attend the office for 5 weeks before the world descends into a hopefully once-in-a-generation global pandemic. Should this happen, remain calm. Repeat steps 1 to 5, except this time do them from home and mostly in your pajamas. And finally, when you have done all this, present your story to the Environmental Placement Program Awards as a helpful how-to guide on how to work as an intern for the Energy Saving Trust. Thank you.
Very well done, Kathleen. That was so good. We loved your humour, and I think if it's okay with you, we'll take your how-to guide and share it with all our other students who are on placement. So great to know that we have that. Now Kathleen will do some questions from our judges. So judges, get ready. We'll go first with Fiona Forrest Anderson, one of our head judges today. Fiona, remember to unmute yourself and you can go ahead and ask Kathleen the first question.
Thank you very much for that, Kathleen. I do like a logical step, and you gave steps 1 to 5 there, not just for yourself, but for future interns. I wanted to ask what the greatest challenge to steps 1 to 5 was, knowing that you've thrown a few things in there, from global pandemic to way back to the decision to immigrate, or emigrate as the case may be in the first instance. What was the greatest challenge to steps 1 to 5?
Well, I think the global pandemic was a challenge, but I think with the close-knit team that I was in, it didn't present as much of a challenge potentially as it could have. And immigrating was a dream that I'd had since I was about 16, and when I came to visit Edinburgh for the first time, so it was more exciting than challenging. I think for my placement, just getting to grips with everything that I needed to do. As I said, the tool is quite complex, and there's a lot behind it, and getting to grips with everything that EST does and the Scottish Home Renewables team as a whole. It was quite the steep learning curve, but I think I managed it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Fiona. That was great. And next question is from David Hogg. Take it away whenever you're ready, David.
Hi, Kathleen. Fantastic presentation. I always love a bit of humour in the presentations. That was really good, really clever. It wouldn't be like me if I didn't focus on the technical parts. So I have a question around. You said you had to conduct training with all of the advisors, and you immediately got bombarded with lots of kind of detailed technical questions. How did you go about answering those technical questions, and was it a case of kind of on the cuff having to come up with answers, or was it very much you could go back and research?
I think it was a combination. So because of the technical complexity of the tool, there are certainly parts of it that I don't understand. The heat pump efficiency part of the tool certainly being one of them. So when I was asked that question, I think it was a case of relying on my colleague manager who was with me, Felicity. She was as my standby when we were giving the training, but there was certainly also a level of I'll note that down and come back to you when the questions involve like the processes of the tool and queries that the advisors might have on using the complex processes of the tool that maybe I hadn't thought about before. I would definitely get back to them on that.
Thanks.
Nice one. Well done, David. That was really good, Kathleen. Really good job, and very well done with the presentation and your slides. The benefit of going first is that now you can sit back and relax while all the other finalists go ahead. So thank you. Let's have a wee look and see who's next up. Now we have Rowan Stanford. Rowan was placed at the Scottish Government as a Climate Change Plan Update Policy Assistant. That's a really long job title. Hopefully you can fit that in a CV okay. Rowan, whenever you're ready, take the floor, and remember just to unmute yourself as well.
Good morning, everyone. Can I just check, Rachel, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good to go.
Perfect. So good morning, my name is Rowan, and thanks very much for inviting me along to talk today. It was really interesting listening to that first presentation from Kathleen, and I hope I can give you a bit of an insight into my placement, which was with the Scottish Government, the impact it had on me, and the impact of the project. So if we can move to the next slide, please, Rachel. So my placement ran from November 2019 to July 2020, and it was in the Scottish Government's Climate Change Plan team. Scotland's climate change plans are the statutory documents that set out the wide range of actions that the government is taking to tackle climate change, from sustainable travel to how we heat our homes to tree planting. They're published online so anyone can read them, and they also set out how the public and other organisations can help us to meet our targets. Some of you might be aware of these targets, and they were dated in 2019, so they're here on the slide there. And the Climate Change Plan update was a subsequent commitment to set out the actions to meet them. The plan update was highly anticipated as Scotland's most important climate change document so far, needing to set out over 23 megatons of emissions reduction, which is about half of current emissions today. So next slide, please, Rachel. So a bit on my activity throughout the placement. One of the best things about this placement for me was that it allowed me to work on a deliverable project and see my actions reflected in the publication. So working in the small team developing the plan update meant I was directly involved in pretty much every aspect of the project and was able to take on a wide variety of tasks. So broadly speaking, I'd say my activity could be split up into these 4 themes here. So there's developing the plan update and drafting it, supporting our Cabinet Secretary, Rosanna Cunningham, some stakeholder and public engagement, and then supporting the climate change division. So next slide, please. So firstly, developing and drafting the plan. So the government had never produced an update to one of its plans before and had committed to do so by the end of April 2020. Furthermore, when I first started, Catherine, my supervisor, was the only other member of the team, meaning we didn't really have much time and I had to adapt quickly and take on responsibility. As I've mentioned, climate change plans contain policies from all across the economy, meaning a key part of our team's role was coordinating effort from various government divisions. So our team is in the centre of this diagram here. Firstly, this meant interacting with the 8 key sectors, so each of which has a chapter in the climate change plan. So for example, transport or industry, agriculture, as shown in the orange ring. And then secondly, developing policies within these areas required input from these wider teams, shown in the blue ring. So for example, modelling or finance, and working with all these people. Finally, I was also working with Cabinet and ministers. So this meant I was helping to draft papers so that the First Minister and the rest of Cabinet could sit down and discuss key aspects of the draft plan and other opportunities for decarbonising. Working with these lots of different individuals and teams and commissioning them to take on work really helped to improve my communication skills, and I quickly learned how to motivate others, including those more senior than myself. At the same time as coordinating this policy development, our team had a role of pulling together the draft plan. So being a key part of this team leading on these conversations meant I got to shape the structure and direction of the plan, give my perspectives, and help to take these key decisions. This meant I was weighing up options for the structure of the update, so how many chapters it would have, for example. I then began to draft these core chapters. So for example, I wrote parts of the executive summary or the public engagement chapter that ended up in the final version. At the same time, I was updating Cabinet and ministers on our progress. And lastly, I led on completing the impact assessments of the policies. So next slide, please, Rachel. So in addition to this, supporting the project involved a range of other activities, which I split up into 3 sections here. So firstly, this was supporting our Cabinet Secretary, Rosanna Cunningham. This meant I was providing advice in advance of a decision that needed to be made, writing speeches for appearances at events, helping respond to letters from members of the public, or providing briefing for meetings or events. Often this work would involve really tight ministerial deadlines. So for example, I'd get a commission at 4 or 5 o'clock one day and it'd be due the next day at 10 AM. This meant there often wasn't much time for others to review, so I had to be confident that what I had written was up to a high standard. Secondly, a bit of stakeholder and public engagement. So a key part of the project was interacting with stakeholders in the public and gathering views on policy options or working with businesses to help them take action themselves. So for example, I led on coordinating the meetings of the Sustainable Renewal Advisory Group, which is a stakeholder group set up to discuss decarbonising and a green recovery from COVID-19. The group includes MSPs from all parties and stakeholders such as WWF and SCDI. I prepared the papers and attended all the meetings and received a good amount of positive feedback at the end from the members on the papers that I'd written. In addition to this, another example is I coordinated 3 large stakeholder engagement events in February, meaning I led on every aspect and I had to take a number of key decisions. So this meant inviting over 400 stakeholders, viewing and booking venues, managing over £20,000 worth of funding, and then planning the conversations and attending to help facilitate them myself. So finally, last week during my placement, I volunteered to try and support and improve the climate change division a bit. So for example, I developed and led the coordination of a cross-government newsletter on climate change. This goes out to over 100 people, including some of the most senior people in government. Additionally, I volunteered to help out with the COVID-19 response, and I joined up a group set up to support the well-being and effective working of people in the climate change division. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So a bit on the impact of the project. So for me personally, in July, after 8 months in the role, the government created a post for me and offered me a promotion to stay within the team. This allowed me to take on a bit more responsibility, and I'm really pleased to say I'm still working with them now. The publication of the plan itself was unfortunately delayed due to the pandemic, but was published in mid-December and reframed around a green recovery from COVID-19. It received a decent amount of news coverage. For example, it was on BBC TV and radio in December, and it was dubbed as one of the most ambitious climate change plans in the world. It contains over 100 new policies since the last plan, announces 400 million of new funding, and accounts for 23 megatons of emissions reduction. The plan has been viewed over 17,500 times by people in 19 different countries, and it's already being used by businesses and other organisations across Scotland to help them reduce their emissions. So overall, I feel very, very proud to be able to play a key role in the team pulling it together and see the project from start to finish. So going from shaping the structure of the document in its early stages, to discussing the policies with the public, to seeing my work in the final version. For example, I was in charge of design and choosing the pictures, meaning I chose the cover photo on the screen just now. So lastly, if we can move to the next slide and talk a bit about my personal development and skills. So coming to this placement straight after my undergraduate degree meant it was a pretty new environment for me. I've had to work really hard, but I've learned so much and I've gained many transferable skills that I think I could take to lots of different working environments. I've tried to capture these with this word cloud on the slide. The coordinator role that our team had to play has helped me to improve my ability to motivate others or produce high quality written work for meetings, as well as my communication skills. So this includes going from chairing meetings or writing parts for publication. The variety of the project has undoubtedly helped me to become more organised and show me the value of being adaptable. So I'd go from brainstorming ideas for public engagement one day to writing papers for cabinet the next. Lastly, for me personally, one of the things that's helped me with is confidence. So working on a project like this at pace has taught me how to trust my own judgment and that I can take on responsibility. So conscious I'm probably running out of time. In conclusion, this placement has been an absolutely fantastic experience and it's given me a completely unique opportunity that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to access. It's opened my eyes to so many different career options, helped with my own personal development enormously, and I've been able to meet some really great people as well. So I'd like to thank everyone involved for setting up the project for me, and thanks again for having me along today.
Well done, Rowan. Good job, that was amazing. We'll move on to questions and answers now. We have Alison now with us today. I didn't introduce her at the beginning. Alison is a sustainability specialist at the Scottish Enterprise. Alison, whenever you're ready, you can ask Rowan the first questions.
Ryan, that was absolutely phenomenal. To get the opportunity to work on one of the most important documents. So I certainly think for Scotland, and certainly with COP26 and all eyes on Scotland, potentially for the world. So absolutely, I'm maybe going a little bit too superlative on this, but I'm very, very impressed. The one thing I have noticed, you completely, you've hit the ground running with this. And, you know, to be able to do things like ministerial briefings, you know, within Scottish Enterprise, you know, we all, you know, breathe the heavy sigh when we have to write a ministerial briefing. So, you know, to do it so quickly in the middle of an internship is phenomenal. Can I ask, what did you find? What was the most daunting part for you of the placement?
I guess for me, the most daunting part was, like I said during the presentation, that the key part of our team was interacting with lots of different people. So you had to motivate people from across lots of different government divisions. So maybe working in electricity or industry, and the first thing they don't think about is climate change. And as well, you're working with people who are maybe directors or deputy directors, so a bit further up in the organization. So I guess going into meetings and having to sort of plead my case to these people and persuade them about the values of climate change. And then even after the pandemic, when climate change has gone down the agenda and people have got so many other things to worry about within their own departments and let alone personal lives, I think, yeah, having to adapt to that and learning how to motivate people and sort out these sort of intergovernment conflicts and just working effectively was what I found really daunting at first, but really helped to boost my confidence when it started going well. And then I got to interact with, the more people I knew, the more people I was able to interact with, and kept getting a bit more senior until I was eventually interacting with ministers themselves. So it was really good.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Alison. That's a good question. Next up is Kevin Matthew, one of our judges. Kevin, whenever you're ready, you can ask Rowan a question.
Hi, Rowan. I just want to echo Alison's points as well. I mean, it's fantastic. All eyes are focused on the policies that Scotland is bringing forward, and to work on that is really a fantastic opportunity, and you've really done lots of good work. You said in your presentation that you were able to work in many different areas, so providing advice, writing speeches, providing briefing information, engaging with the public and other stakeholders, and working directly with businesses. To go in the opposite direction of Alison's question, what did you find most enjoyable in your work, and what would you like to take further from what you've done?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. For me, it was probably one of the most enjoying aspects was, taking the opportunity to work with the public. So during these engagement events, I got to be a bit more creative. So I got to brainstorm them from the start, so plan who we want to talk to, booking the venues, how we want to have these conversations, and then going along and having learning that so many people care about climate change. There's so many businesses have got such good ideas, and being able to design these events so we get the most out of them, and then just sitting down and talking to people about climate change was really, really good. And that goes with, I was talking to businesses and ENGOs, and that gave me a real insight into how passionate some people are and taking on all these opinions and then being able to condense them down and put them into policies or what was included in the plan. That was really good, and that'd be something a career I'd potentially think about in the future, is working for one of these kind of organizations. So that was what I enjoyed the most, probably.
Fantastic, thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin, for that. Yeah, well done, Rowan. That was amazing. I hope that working for the Scottish Government on placement has really, been a launch pad for you into a career in the environmental sector. What you have done is very impressive, and now being a finalist at the awards is an extra box that you can tick or something that you can add to your CV. So, yep, very well done. Good job. You can sit back and relax now. Okay, let's have a look, see who is next up. We have Lilith Cooper. Lilith was placed at Fife College Students Association as a campus cycling officer, which was funded by Cycling Scotland. So hi, Cycling Scotland, if you're listening. Lilith has also been very impressive, and she is an author. Lilith has written a book It's called Gear for Queers, so definitely check that out when you can. Right, Lilith, whenever you're ready, we'll get on with your presentation. Take it away, and remember to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rachel. So hi, I'm Lilith. I'm a white non-binary person with hair that's shaved at the sides and tied up into a messy top knot on top, lockdown haircut, obviously. My background is artfully blurred. I'm going to be using a PowerPoint presentation today, and my first slide, which is currently on screen, is 2 speech bubbles, one in green, one in blue. The one at the top says cycling at Fife College, and the one on the bottom has my name and contact details, ljc72@kent.ac.uk and at Lilith J. Cooper on Twitter. I'll audio describe anything on slides that's not something I'm also saying out loud. Next slide, please, Rachel. So firstly, a little bit about me. This is a digital illustration of me riding a bike in shorts and a denim jacket with 2 panniers on the back. Around it are some handwritten pieces of information. I was the campus cycling officer, or CCO, at Fife College from January 2020 to August 2020. I'm a cyclist, an author, and although I live in Fife now, I originally come from Cambridge, which is why I have what I call fen legs, which make me useless at climbing hills on a bike. I'm queer, I use they them pronouns, I make zines, and I'm a pretty anxious person, which is one of the reasons I can't drive. I'm passionate about active travel, about social justice, mental health, environmental justice, and cycle touring. Next slide, please, Rachel. So Fife College is a further and higher education college with 5 campuses spread across Fife. This is a digital illustration of the St Bricedale campus in Kirkcaldy. The college has about 15,000 students and 1,000 members of staff. The Fife College Student Association, or FCSA, represents the student body of Fife College. They're a dynamic and innovative team and are demonstratively committed to addressing environmental issues, student health and well-being, and student travel choices. Fife College itself has made a clear commitment to address its environmental impact. This is both clearly laid out in its environmental and social sustainability policy and reflected in numerous other policy documents. Within this context, active and sustainable travel has been identified as a key area for improvement. Active travel rates are quite low at Fife College, with staff mostly travelling by car and students by public transport. Identified barriers to active travel include access to bikes and bike storage, distance, fitness, childcare and other responsibilities, and generally knowledge and awareness of active travel options. Next slide, please, Rachel. So the aim of the CCO role was to support Fife College and the FCSA in delivering cycling projects and activities aimed at getting students and staff travelling by bicycle. The Cycle Friendly Campus Award is a set of criteria Cycling Scotland uses to assess the extent that colleges and universities support, facilitate and enable active travel and cycling amongst both students and staff. And this provided a key framework for identifying priorities during my own placement. During this presentation, I'm going to talk about several key areas I focused on, how they link to broader priorities, the impact they had, and the legacy they leave. I'm pleased to say that I contributed to the successful application for funding for a new CCO at the FCSA for 2021, and I have no doubt that Hope is continuing and developing much of the work that I'll describe here. Next slide. The first thing I want to talk about is work around infrastructure and facilities. I was lucky to come into post and get to dive straight into implementation of the cycle-friendly campus development funding that my predecessor successfully applied for. I worked closely with the estates team and the FCSA to coordinate delivery of several aspects of the project. The most substantial was the refurbishment of the Holby changing facilities to create facilities specifically for active travel users. I worked on branding these to create a distinct identity as the Green Room and tie these facilities in with the work of the FCSA and the Health and Wellbeing team. Pictured on this slide is a promotional poster for the Green Room and a meme from the 90s show Changing Rooms, where the FCSA, represented obviously by Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen, is excited to show off the new changing rooms at the media space to 2 contestants labelled students and staff. With lockdown, there was an increased focus on local and national infrastructure provisions for active travel users, including footpaths and cycle paths, particularly with social distancing in mind. There was also a commitment to kind of public spending as well, with £2.4 million being announced for infrastructure in Fife through the Spaces for People Fund. And this was an important opportunity to get the voices of Fife College staff and students heard and the future needs of the college met. During lockdown, I launched the We Need Space campaign using digital communications to encourage and support staff and students to participate in the mapping of areas that needed improvement. Next slide. The second area I made a significant impact in was the Cycle to Work scheme. Based on active travel survey data, staff at Fife College predominantly travelled by car. The dominance of car travel amongst staff contributed to an attitude amongst students where cars were seen as a first choice. The Cycle to Work scheme had a very low uptake at Fife College, and it had been a significant period to the last window for staff to apply. I worked with HR to increase the upper spending limit to make the scheme more appealing to staff who might want to purchase e-bikes. As well as planning a series of windows for 2020, we also worked towards implementing a year-round scheme in 2021. In the build-up to the first window, I signed Fife College up for the Sustrains Workplace Journey Challenge. This is a month-long online challenge where staff can make a profile linked to their organisation and record journeys that would otherwise have been single-occupancy car journeys that they took by other means. It created a strong transition for participating staff members into the Cycle to Work scheme, with the first window opening at the end of the challenge. The first window was planned for the 1st of April 2020, and so coincided almost exactly with the temporary closure of the college under lockdown. But Cycle Solutions was still able to deliver bikes in line with restrictions and in a COVID-safe way, and lockdown really resulted in an upswing in interest in cycling. The scheme saw a substantial increase in applications, with 16 members of staff confirmed and with bikes when I left. Next slide, please. Ian Stewart, one of the members of staff who accessed the scheme, shared, "The Cycle to Work scheme allowed me to access the great outdoors and return to pedal power after a 20-odd-year break." Chris Cook, another member of staff who accessed the scheme to purchase an e-bike, described how, "I have been using the bike daily for work, transport, shopping and exercise, and I have not used my car in almost a year now." Next slide. When I came into post, I was struck that one of the shared concerns of staff and students in the active travel surveys was about distance and hills, which I could definitely relate to, and there was a significant interest in e-bikes. I decided to put together an application for the Transport Scotland e-bike grant to secure funding for some e-bikes and one e-cargo bike, which would make the FCSA's underused pool bike hire more appealing and also offer staff the chance to try before they buy through the Cycle to Work scheme. I wanted to demonstrate the possibilities of e-bikes for active travel, and I wanted to give a sense of the scope of what a bike could do and look like. E-bikes also address the concerns of several disabled students for whom conventional push bikes weren't accessible. We were successfully awarded £14,000 funding for 7 e-bikes and 1 e-cargo bike, all also available through a local Cycle to Work scheme approved supplier. This was one of 46 funded projects and one of just 2 in Fife. This funding required match funding, so I worked with the FCSA to secure £5,000 of match funding from the college, which also demonstrated the college principal Hugh Hall's commitment to active travel and complements the college's ongoing investment in electric vehicles. Next slide. I left this placement feeling confident leading on projects and funding applications. I valued the opportunity to take initiative, for example, with the e-bike fund, as well as the support I received from the FCSA, particularly in transitioning to working from home and developing my skills in digital engagements and events. Throughout the placement, I got the opportunity to develop my marketing and communication skills. I built enduring relationships and networks, and these really tie to what I'm doing now. Despite starting a PhD, I've continued to be involved in active travel and cycling in Fife. I'm looking forward to participating in the Switching Gears Festival, organised by Tamsin Dewar, current CCO at Transition St Andrews. And I've also had the opportunity to speak at the SUS Trans Diversity Equity Inclusion Group and Cycling UK's Women Festival of Cycling about LGBTQ+ inclusion in cycling and active travel campaigning. I look forward to continuing this work. I know this wasn't the year many of us expected, but whilst it has presented significant challenges, it has also been a unique opportunity to make vital changes and imagine different futures. I firmly believe that we can make the new normal cycling and walking, and I felt really privileged to be in a role where I could contribute to that change at Fife College. Thank you.
Very well done, Lilith. Good job. You did it. Great amount of time as well. You made it under the 8 minutes. So very good job. Let's move on to questions and answers now. So the first person to ask you a question will be Fiona. Fiona, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Lilith. In my notes, I've written a few words here, just single words: innovative, passionate, creative, inclusive and accessible. And they're certainly values that my organisation put up on the wall. We live by those university values. Some of those are enshrined in university values. And so I wanted to ask, actually, something slightly different. What is next for you based on how much this experience gave you and why?
So in terms of kind of going forward, I think what I'm really kind of passionate about and interested in is really understanding cycling as broadly linked to kind of the entwined issues of environmental justice and social justice. I don't think we can kind of separate those two. And I think it's really important to think about who's represented and who's thought about when we're thinking about active travel and who's taking part in active travel. So I'm kind of quite, or like what I've been working on and what I want to continue to work on is bring kind of a different voice and also hold space for other different voices, because I don't represent the be all and end all of diversity in cycling. In really kind of like local campaigning, where I think there's a lot of chance to make change and act on kind of this opportunity as people are starting to cycle more. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Fiona. Next up is Kevin. If you could ask Lilith a question, that would be great, just whenever you're ready.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Lilith. Thank you for your presentation. I've got a really soft spot for your work because, as you may know, I started as a cycling campus officer as well. So I'm already biased towards you. That's good news. The question I want to ask, and I'm sure you'll be aware of this, having worked in your field, what do you think are the major issues that prevent people from accessing cycling in Fife, with particular attention to people with protected characteristics?
So I think partly it's to do with a set of assumptions that we make about the barriers that people experience to cycling, to do with things like even just access to bike storage at home. I know it was one of the big concerns of kind of young people at the college, that they really didn't have anywhere to store a bike that was safe at home, let alone at the college. And intervening in that sort of thing is quite challenging. I obviously think that like representation is part of it, but I think it can only ever be part of it. I think you can only be what you see to a certain extent, but we also need to look at kind of the really kind of structural barriers to inclusion that people experience. And I think, you know, there's not, for example, a lot of data about specifically like LGBTQ plus inclusion in cycling, and because we don't have that data, because we don't know how and where people participate and why, it's really hard to make changes based on that. So yeah, I think that's probably a kind of a crucial part of identifying those barriers. And I think, you know, we have other places to look. I think people have already been talking about, you know, Black, Indigenous, people of colour being involved in cycling and the barriers that they experience and how we can act. So I think integrating that into all of our work, as opposed to treating it as a separate thing, is really important.
Great. Yeah, thank you for your answer.
Okay, thanks so much for asking your question, Kevin. And well done, Lilith, really good job. And I'm sure everyone at Cycling Scotland and Fife College Students Association will be proud of you. Okay, let's move on to our next finalist. We have Spiros Anjali. So Spiros was placed at Mabbitt and Associates as an environmental consultant. Spiros, whenever you're ready, you can take it away, and just remember to unmute yourself.
Hello there. Thank you all for having me here. It was really interesting to see how the other interns experience their internships. I've got to say, although our responsibilities vary substantially, it's kind of nice to see that everybody is working towards one goal, and I'm really impressed with that. I know that the time is limited, so I should get started. Firstly, I would like to give you a brief breakdown of my presentation. I'm going to start by providing a brief background on myself. Then I'm going to give you an overview of my internship with Mabbitt, just to give you a good understanding of what my responsibilities were with the company and with which sectors I was mostly involved with. Subsequently, I'm going to mention a few projects I've worked on and what was my personal contribution to those projects and how I have assisted to their successful delivery during my time. Then I'll try to showcase the impact that I had on clients, the economy, and of course the natural environment of Scotland. Finally, I'm planning to indicate where this life-changing experience has led me to and briefly describe my future plans. Next slide, please. Thank you. So after fulfilling my military duties with in the island of Cyprus, where I was born and raised, I've decided that I need to change, so I had to relocate abroad for my dreams and aspirations. Therefore, after moving to Glasgow in 2014, I've studied environmental management planning at Glasgow Colin University for 4 years. During that period, I was fortunate enough to undertake a work placement with Internship in Cyprus, where I was given the baptism of fire, I would like to say, and as an immature 30-year student, I found out that the industry was so much different, and I've learned during that time that this is what I wanted to do. So after coming back and graduating, I found out that there were a lot of gaps in that knowledge. So I went to the University of Glasgow, where I wanted to become an expert in sustainable development and environmental economics. Next slide, please. Thank you, Rachel. So after obtaining my master's degree, I found myself in a difficult situation as I was struggling to find a job suitable to my needs and expertise. And however, fortunately, after a lot of struggle and hundreds of endless night shifts, Bright Green Business and Mabel have given me this wonderful opportunity to come forward and to be part of the team with like-minded people and have a positive impact on people's lives and the natural environment. Overall, my internship started in February 2020. I was part of the environment team in Mabel's headquarters in Glasgow, and most of my time was spent working on multidisciplinary projects and co-leading circular economy projects that were funded by Zero Waste Scotland. It is also important to mention that despite the pandemic and the first lockdown, my internship did not come to a sudden end, but all the necessary measures have been taken to facilitate remote working. Double click into the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So as previously mentioned, my main responsibilities revolve around circular economy and zero waste Scotland. However, out of my own initiative, I did get a chance to step forward and get involved with other projects, compliance deliverables, integrated management systems, biodiversity planning, and carbon reduction mechanisms. Regarding my contribution to circular economy projects, I have managed to start from market research tasks and move my way forward with co-leading and providing business advice to customers. One particular project I was concentrating on was about a small business located in Scotland that is currently providing sanitizing products in refillable containers rather than single-use disposable containers. I'm not sure about the exact numbers, but some of our early projections were indicating the potential of diverting thousands of tons of single-use plastic from ending up in the landfill just from this project only. Getting involved with compliance deliverables was also very exciting for me. Prior to the enforcement of travel restrictions, I had the chance to travel and inspect the surface integrity of coma establishments that stored and utilize hazardous environment substances such as acids and solvents. And furthermore, as I've tried to maintain the performance of our clients beyond compliance, I got involved with integrated management systems that underpin the previous point, where I have produced bespoke work instructions for manufacturing partners that were complemented by contamination action plans. As a person who loves getting involved with wildlife conservation, when I was asked to provide some consultation and insights for the production of a biodiversity action plan, I was thrilled. Therefore, after a lot of research, I have managed to contribute to the production of Hatfield Moor's Biodiversity Action Plan, a site that is designated as a special area of conservation, a national nature reserve, and it's a site that houses thousands of fauna and flora species. Finally, despite carbon accounting conducted in conjunction with circular economy projects, in some instances, I have helped with client engagement support regarding the streamlined energy and carbon reporting regulations. Therefore, our team was able to help clients to comply with the relevant regulations by recording their performance and providing expert advice in accordance to their reduction commitments. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. During this internship, I have managed to gain a lot as an individual while having a positive impact on Scotland's environment. As I look back, I now realize that this life-changing experience had an impact on me like no other. In only 3 months, I have managed to help small businesses that are so vital for Scotland's economy to become more efficient with their resources, and I have helped the Scottish environment to make a small step towards a zero-waste carbon neutral future. Which is insane for me just to think of it. In the process, of course, I found myself to mature as a professional, and I have acquired that valuable work experience I so desperately needed. Next slide, please. And at the end of my internship, since my cooperation with MABE could not continue due to COVID-19, I have decided that it was a good time and opportunity for me to do a PhD. And while doing that, I found myself working on a research and innovation project while collaborating with 3 universities in Scotland and Cyprus. Additionally, I'm currently preparing to provide GIS teaching support to undergraduate students, which is also very exciting for me. And actually, a week ago, I've been contacted by a former colleague from MABE who was checking about my availability and whether I'm interested in going back in case there's a new opening in the future and as the vaccines start working, which obviously means a lot to me. Let's go to the final slide. Overall, I would definitely recommend graduates to follow the same path and apply for bright green business opportunities. This has been a life-changing opportunity for me, and it could change their lives too. And that's about it. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to come forward and share my experiences with you. Do you have any questions?
Hi Spiros, thank you so much for that and for your kind words about the environmental placement programme. That's definitely what we strive for, and what's a success story is that if our placements do lead to full-time permanent employment within the environmental sector. So thank you for all the information that you gave, and definitely you've gained some invaluable skills that you'll be able to carry on in the future. So let's move on to some questions. The first question will be from Fiona Forrest Anderson. Whenever you're ready, Fiona, you can take it away.
Hi, Spiros, thank you very much for that. I love to hear anything about collaboration. And so the point there about now collaborating between Cyprus and other universities in Scotland are lovely to hear, because that's how we spread the word and strengthen the agenda, which of course applies to more than just Scotland. I wanted to ask, it was very clear that you threw yourself into other projects and you listed things like compliance, management systems, carbon reduction, natural habitats. How do you prioritise one over the other?
Well, to be honest, I knew that my time in MABE could be limited, so I tried to gain as much as I can. I tried to get myself into as much work as I could do, try to extract as much information as I could and get involved with those projects to gain that valuable experience. So at the beginning it was challenging, but I've got to say that my colleagues were super friendly, and everybody was there to help me whenever I was struggling, give me advice how to prioritize workloads. And obviously, my goal was try to keep projects in budget and timelines. So, and it was interesting to see how I could work projects at the same time. I mean, like in terms of getting finished with the tasks, submitting them for review, and then going to other projects, and so on. And it was really challenging, but at the end of the day, it was a new skill for me that I enhanced, and it was all good.
Thank you. It will be a skill you will need in your PhD as you juggle lots of plates, but well done. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And the next question will be from David. Whenever you're ready, David, take it away.
Spiros, thank you very much for that presentation. I love the style of the slides, kind of sliding back and forth. I'm not normally one for transitions, but I quite like that. It's clever. So you told us a few of your projects there. My kind of questions similarly along the same lines as Fiona's in that sense. I was kind of looking for you to talk a bit about what your favorite one was and why, but also which one you then felt you learnt the most from and why, if you can answer those. I realize that's 4 questions, but judge's prerogative.
No, I understand. It's okay. I've got to say that those 2 are quite different. So I believe you get to learn the most while you're doing mistakes and while getting involved with circular economy projects. I may have made some mistakes in terms of getting passionate and trying to contact people that I shouldn't try to contact to extract that valuable information that would facilitate a circular economy project. And that was first mistake that I've made, and I've learned a lot that there's a certain process that needs to be followed whenever you're contacting people to extract that valuable information. And to answer that second part of the question, my favorite project was the one that I found myself co-leading. It was at the end of my placement, and after learning from my mistakes, and I've managed to contribute to such level where I was put in a position to have to be the first point of contact between me and our client. So I was in a position to provide those insights and provide assistance and go back and forth, research and see the satisfaction of our clients once they've got that information delivered and they saw how they could benefit from the circular economy approach that I have provided.
Fantastic, thank you.
Next one, thank you so much for your questions, David and Fiona. And well done, Spiros, that was fantastic. You can now sit back and relax and wait for the result later on. Okay, so next up, last but by no means least, we have Joe Cameron. Joe Cameron was an engagement and information assistant at the 2050 Climate Group. So whenever you're ready, Joe, you can take it away. And again, just as usual, remember to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rachel, and hello everyone. Thanks also to you all for being here. It's my pleasure to wrap up the proceedings of the finalist presentations. And as mentioned, my name is Joe Cameron, and my EPP placement was with the Scottish Youth Climate Charity 2050 Climate Group as the Information and Engagement Assistant. Now, this began as a 12-week placement, but then gradually evolved over time to a full 12 months from November 2019 to 2020. And over this period of time, I had the opportunity to work on a range of different projects, from the daily running within the organisation to more sizable projects such as writing the annual impact report and running the Climate Action Fund. So with regards to this and for this particular presentation, I've decided to choose 3 key points of work that I feel particularly resonate with the spirit of enterprise and resourcefulness. And you'll see I've subtitled this presentation as an immersion in teamwork, creativity and commitment, because I feel that these 3 traits neatly correlate with what I'll speak about today, but also are embodied in the spirit of 2050 Climate Group and the people that are involved in. So just to quickly run through what I'll talk about today, I'll begin by looking closely at how I was able to provide support to the volunteer team associated with their climate leadership programme, and then how I was able to lead and lay a foundation for a transition to digital events with the onset of COVID-19. And this will then be followed by how I was able to create an effective and fun space for the organisation to come together in their internal annual event, which looked at values and how I was able to create this online space. And then my final piece of work I'll look at is my network engagement work for the charity and how I was able to create an effective and quite interesting community spaces within the organisation. So without further ado, Rachel, and next slide, please. And so I began as soon as I began my placement, one of my key roles was to support the YLDP, and this is the Young Leadership Development Programme that is one of the main ways that 2050 Climate Group empowers young leaders to take action on the climate change and lead a transition to a just and sustainable future. And I arrived as they were halfway through one of the most intense and fastest programme of events. And the programme consists of around 6 full-day modules that are free and open to the public and take on around 120 people a year. And so my role was to come in and provide close general support to the really committed team of volunteers within the organisation that run the programme. And this ranged from, it was a full immersion in operating events, from the logistics and operating side and the build up to events such, to use an example, such as solving catering issues, to on the day event, had the opportunity to facilitate workshops and provide general support like that, and even address the cohort and public presentations like that. And probably my main role with the volunteers was, after these events, providing and synthesising the data and feedback from each event, and then displaying the effectiveness of the programme, which is some of the data that you can see in front of you. And this went well up until the onset of COVID-19, where a very much in-person event was disrupted, and it was up to myself to lead this transition for the charity, to come up with a platform and online platforms and a protocol behind this. And I was able to do this through research, and then once decided on programs such as Zoom and Miro, I was able to lay a foundation through a series of framework and protocols for use for the various volunteers, and provided easy access, one-on-one guides, and in general offered support on the day and in the lead up to the event. And this we managed to pull off a successful conclusion to the programme in a digital way. And this also led as a foundation to the Climate Justice series that the organisation ran later on in the year. And the particular data here that I compiled to show the effectiveness of the programme is a couple of snapshots of the quotes, and it's great to see these examples of what the programme gave to people involved in it, from this sense of really bringing people together and leaving them inspired and energised by the attendance. And on the right hand side is data that I've compiled from the beginning of the programme and the end, and then collated these through working out the average of each response from before and after. And it's great to see a marked 2 to 2.5 increase in participants' responses and how engaged and empowered they felt to lead this sustainable transition out of 10. And I like quite nicely how the general numbers also reflect these snapshots and case studies of the quotes there. And yeah, next slide please, Rachel. I'll look at a next piece of work. So with the onset of the Black Lives Matter protest, an inward lens was brought to the charity, and how 2050 Climate Group really lived up to and what decided its values, and particularly its already claimed value of inclusivity. And with this, it was felt a good idea to use the charity's annual internal event, which is traditionally an in-person event, usually in a nice rural setting, and it works as a team bonding exercise, but also as an opportunity to work through a particular issue or development within the organisation. And it fell upon myself to coordinate and lead on this event, and very much aware of the onset of newly formed Zoom fatigue and issues like that. I wanted to create this creative and online space, and in communication with an external facilitator, I was able to use this new platform of Miro alongside Zoom to allow a real-time collaboration of individuals tuning in from around the country. And it was even able to, as you can see on this screenshot from the day, providing, going around clockwise, a journey around the Scottish Highlands and providing a different interactive point for each part of the workshop. And you can see by the flurry of discussion there that it really helped catalyse discussions, and this led on to important developments within a working group and on values within the organisation, and to sort of size it even quickly, sizable actions such as value shout-outs for the team meetings, and where volunteers would shout out if a certain member had lived by this value. And this important work's now sort of continuing on, where they're using a social technique to continue and develop the diversity inclusion ideas. But it was great to see this sort of creating a space and laying a key foundation to really bounce off from in terms of the organisation's values. And next slide, please, Rachel, for the final piece. And so 2050 Climate Group, once everyone goes through their Young Leadership Development Programme, they become part of the Leaders Network within the charity, and this is now 500 plus strong. And the charity was looking for ways to improve engagement, and one of my ideas for this was to found the Climate Action Book Club. And the premise of this is to provide a communal space where members of the group can vote on certain reading materials and also pledge to do an action, and this rolls on each month. So whether they're doing separate or the same actions, they're able to do this all together, and there's a really communal feel. And I did this for a trifecta of using WhatsApp groups for general communications, to utilising our already in place Facebook page for general notifications to allow the full network to see what was going on, as well as using a platform called Trello to provide an HQ for general tips and the status of the club, for using examples such as a place where people could see where to get second-hand books or sustainable bookshops. And it's great, these snapshots of people who have attended events. It really has become a great space for people to get together, and there's a real community sense, which I feel is probably the most powerful thing about it. And it's great the amount of different aspects and discussions that we have, from like the carbon capture and mindfulness to really the people coming away from it energized and fulfilled. And so it's, in this sense, I feel like it's a focused micro group within the wider network community. So it's just great to sort of see this and how it's come about. So I think I'll leave it with that for that piece of work and wrap it up with conclusions, Rachel. So I think hopefully I've highlighted that I was able to, for this presentation anyway, really play a key role in the development and success of the organisation's digital transition and ensure a successful conclusion to the leadership programme, as well as important developments for the organisation's values and their engagement work within their own network. A sort of pioneering, developing charity like 2050, there's always lots still to do, and it'd be great to see all these points continued and worked on, which they are. And finally, as a general point, a few of the pieces of work that I've highlighted, of course, have been great for my own development, and I've really, I think, highlighted the wide range of roles that I was able to do. Is I've had a range from software skills to full-on interpersonal community building aspects, and it's been a great overall experience, and as people have mentioned already today, a real confidence booster, and has sort of led me on to new plans of creating social enterprises, which is really exciting. So yeah, just thank you for the opportunity, and I'll wrap up there the proceedings. Thanks everyone for listening.
Well done, Joe. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all about your experiences while on placement. Like Spiros has said prior, is that we are all working towards one goal, and even just something like the book club is just so valuable for that, creating a network where everyone can talk about you know, key environmental topics in a kind of safe environment and bounce off ideas off one another. So really interesting and inspiring. Also, 2050 Climate Group, hi if you're listening, are great supporters of the placement programme. They've currently got someone else on placement, and Joe was before that person, and I think about 7 others in the past. So really nice to have them support you and the placement programme for the past couple of years.
Yeah, big up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now let's move on to questions and answers. I'll welcome to the floor Alison, one of our judges from the Scottish Enterprise. Whenever you're ready, Alison, you can ask your first question. Take it away.
Thanks, Rachel. Joe, that was excellent. And I suppose to really big up the 2050 Climate Group a little bit more, can you tell me a little bit more about 2050 Climate Group and how people can join and why they should join?
Definitely, and thanks, Alison, for the opportunity. So, its reason to be 2050 Climate Group is to empower, equip and enable young people within Scotland to lead a transition to a sustainable and just society. And this is done in a range of ways, like I already mentioned, through the Young Leadership Development Programme, but also through their Leaders Networks event, which are usually open to the public, and their policy engagement. And through their policy engagement, they are generally considered a voice of young people. And this is transparent in how they lead on various different committees within Scotland that are associated with such as the Climate Change Commission. There has just been a big batch of volunteers who have just joined the organisation, but I think it's always important to look out for ways you can join through that, or particularly I'm aware that the Young Leadership Development Programme will be going ahead later in this year, so please keep an eye out for that and when the application's open for that, because I'm sure Rachel will also attest to it's a wonderful programme and a great sort of catalyst for positive things.
And just out of interest, how young do you have to be, Joe?
18 to 35 is the age.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Alison. That was a great question. It gives everyone a better idea exactly who the 2050 Climate Group are, and if you're under 35, you can join the Leaders Network. Great, thank you. So next up is David. David, whenever you're ready, you can ask your next question to Joe.
Hi Joe, awesome to see the 2050 Climate Group still doing really well and going from strength to strength. I was one of the original founder members back in day when I was still young. So yeah, it's fantastic to see it's still doing really well. My kind of question is on exactly that. You know, I remember the YLDP days just having such a fantastic energy about them, and you know, there was so much commitment and drive to really do things and make a change. How did you, in the transition from in-person events, where that's quite easy to generate, to online events, how did you actually manage to achieve that same level of buzz and excitement and empowerment through the online events, because they do tend to be a bit more stifled, this event obviously excluded?
Yeah, it's tough. I think I would say for our last module, for better or worse, we used a range of different days and events and broke up the module into events. So this ranged from quite interactive workshops to then having more Q&As style questions, and it worked quite well. I would say how you would improve it is through the way I used it for the annual away day for the internal event for the organisation, where you have this face-to-face speaking engagement with participants, but they're also able to real-time communicate through the aspect of Miro, and as if they were using a whiteboard, sort of like an interactive whiteboard, and in that way you get a better sense of what it would be like if you're around a table speaking to people and writing things down together. So that would be my main thing, to sort of create that, and then providing things like breakout rooms where people can go to in groups of 5 or 6 to get a greater chance to just discuss and meet people. Those 2 points would be my main ways of doing it.
Fantastic. Thanks for your answer.
All right, thank you so much, David and Alison. They were both fantastic questions. Well done, Joe. That was great. You can now just sit back, relax, and we'll welcome you all back shortly. Next up is Colin Beatty. Colin has been for many years continued to support the placement programme and is kindly sponsoring our awards ceremony today. Colin, whenever you're ready, you can take the floor and just say a word of thanks to everyone.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. My apologies for appearing a wee bit later in the programme than intended. Technology is wonderful when it works. Carol, thank you for eventually getting me in the back door and back here able to speak to you. So, belatedly, I give you a warm welcome to the Environmental Placement Programme Awards ceremony. We've already heard the contributions made by the students and graduates in helping to build a more sustainable Scotland. And as always, these presentations have been of a very high standard, a very high quality. I don't envy the judges in having to choose between you. And I'm only grateful that I'm not in the position of having to worry about that choice. But we face a global climate emergency, and it really is absolutely critical that we have innovative thinkers who are minded towards how we can have the most environmentally friendly country possible, and who aren't afraid to take the drastic steps necessary to protect our society from the harms of climate change. As Rachel said, I've sponsored this event for a number of years now, and I'm very pleased to see it continuing this year in a virtual format, because it is important. It's a vital occasion for acknowledging the excellent achievements of those that have undertaken placements and have gone that extra mile within their role. And every person who's taken this challenge has something to be very proud of. And I'm certain that this placement will set you all apart from other candidates throughout your career paths. Now, I'm looking forward to hearing who the winning finalist is and presenting them with the trophy entitled Most Enterprising Environmental Intern 2020. But the day also gives us the opportunity to thank the host organisations who have offered the placements. Without them, it simply wouldn't happen. It provides an opportunity to highlight the environmental impact the placements have had on those organisations. And I'm sure that this has made a really lasting impression on those involved. From attending these awards, I know that all the participants in this programme have been of a very high calibre. And this year's presenters are no different. The longevity of the awards ceremony just proves how successful the programme is and how beneficial it is to those involved. So thank you for joining us today in this virtual setting to celebrate all those involved in the Environmental Placement Programme. And I hope that everyone in attendance has already enjoyed the presentations that have been given. And like everyone else, I'm looking forward with anticipation to see who our winner is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colin. That was fantastic. And we really appreciate your time coming over today. And again, sorry for the technical issue at the start, but you were fantastic. And thank you everyone for their presentations. You did really well. Judges, you can now leave and deliberate. You have 20 minutes to decide who your runner-up is and who to crown your winner. While the judges are deliberating, we have a guest speaker with us today, which we're very excited about. We have Olivia Sweeney with us, who is a sustainable waste consultant at Resource Futures, and she is a Black and Green ambassador. Olivia is going to go beyond sustainability and will explain what sustainability means and expand on sustainability in politics, society, and around the world. Olivia, whenever you're ready, you can take it away, and just remember to unmute yourself.
Hi, did that work? Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you perfectly.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. So as has been said, I'm Olivia. Let me first take a second to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm always humbled and surprised when people ask to hear what I have to say, so I hope you find what I have to say interesting. Having just heard all the placement students speak, I don't think I'm going to be talking about anything new that you haven't already come across or thought about, but I just hope I managed to frame things in a way that maybe, you know, sparks a question somewhere and can lead you to look at something more within this field. So to the students who just presented, well done. My university experience was made by being part of amazing internships and placements. The opportunity to present this back to peers, colleagues and experts, though no doubt nerve-wracking and a little disconnected in this online world we now exist in, is a great chance to reflect on what you have learned and hopefully understand a little bit better what you like, what you're good at, and maybe even what you want to be when you grow up. So here is a very brief overview of what I'm hoping to cover today. On the next slide, please. As I said, fingers crossed it's interesting enough to distract you from the nerves of the judging that is happening as we speak. So next slide, please. I just want to preface this talk by saying I'm an expert in nothing. I'm interested and I care, and this is what I have picked up along my three and a bit year journey since I graduated. So feel free to disagree or question me. I do not think that's literally possible today, but find me on LinkedIn, ask a question. My understanding is shaped by who I talk to and what I read. So I'm always excited to have my horizons broadened and opinions challenged. So next slide, please. Starting with a little bit about me. Since I was little, I've always wanted to help make the world a better place. But I had no idea how I was going to do this. I remember learning the 3 R's at school: reduce, reuse, recycle, when I must have been about 8 years old. And ever since then, considering myself green, whatever that may mean. I have a memory of wanting to be an environmental lawyer for a couple of years in primary school, but as I grew, so did my interests in maths and science. And when I began to look at university prospectuses, I found chemical engineering. It fit not only the A-levels I have studied, but it felt like it would give me the practical skills to make a tangible change in the field of sustainability. So up to Edinburgh I went and spent 5 years studying for my master's. I tailored this course as much as I could to my underlying motive, taking courses such as energy systems, carbon capture and storage, a study project looking into the water footprint, and finally my master's, for which I went out to Gothenburg, Chalmers University in Sweden, and looked into making biofuel from waste tall oil. As I said, throughout my time at university, I made the most of internships. I spent a summer in Pakistan looking at how to make membranes that capture carbon from the exhaust of cars. I spent a summer in Romania with Engineers Without Borders, and I finally spent arguably the best summer just outside Glasgow, looking to make electronics manufacturing sites energy neutral. So I was looking at things like if they could have wind turbines, if they could invest in hydropower. And I found these really cool paving slabs that as you walked on them, they converted the kinetic energy of you walking and taking off your weight into electrical power. So that was amazing because obviously in electronics manufacturing, you're constantly walking around the same loop. So as you're working, you're generating energy and electricity. So then upon graduation, the plan was to go into renewable energy. However, I ended up at Lush. In the process of doing the graduate application schemes, I decided that wasn't for me. I didn't want to work for a company that didn't have sustainability and ethics at its core. And I also didn't want to feel boxed in by a graduate scheme. In my head, I'd been in the education system for forever by this point, and I just wanted to be free to do my own thing. And Lush gave that to me. A Lush office is like a Lush shop. If you haven't been in one or smelt one, I would recommend it. So I worked for a couple of years at Lush. My role was an ethical and environmentally friendly buyer of aroma chemicals. So they're the smelly things that you have in fragrances, but that are synthetic. I was able to make my own remit. I was able to travel around the world. I created a new fragrance from waste banana peel, fragrance ingredients, I should say, and I worked extensively to get a Fair for Life and organic certified ethanol from Brazil into our products. After a couple of years, I then moved to my current role, the week of lockdown. So it's been a very crazy year to move to a new city and a new job at Resource Futures. And this is a sustainable waste consultancy where I'm looking to understand what waste people generate, when, how, and what bin they put it in to make it as easily as possible for people to reduce, reuse, recycle, influence behaviour change, influence policy, and hopefully help build the circular economy. And then my second role that I currently have is a Black and Green ambassador. And that is a project specific to Bristol that tackles the intersection between climate and racial justice. And, you know, people have touched on the importance of social justice. So it looks at community action research and projects that can help to celebrate diverse voices and actions within the sustainability spectre that does have a very particular image to it. So enough about me, I think. But just before I flip into the next slides, I want you to take a minute to think about what you mean when you say the words sustainability or green. So if we go on to the next slide, please, and the next again, let's look at what the dictionary definition of sustainability is. I'm not going to read these out for you. You can read the slides yourself, but I just wanted to ask the question of, did this match the definition you had in your head? Do you think everyone has the same definition? And in practice, do you think sustainable economic growth or global environmental sustainability actually looks the same for everyone? And then if we go on to the next slide, we see a definition for what green means. So again, give that a read. And does this match up with what you had in your head? I think green is an even more nebulous term, which I think can make it dangerous or maybe even worse, meaningless to use. The reason I wanted to highlight this at the beginning of what I'm talking to you about today is to show that language matters. People talk about things and interpret things in different ways. Language can be alienating, and these words mean different things or have different interpretations depending on what sphere you use them in. And I think that's one of the big problems with the sustainability sector or the green sector is people are using terms that, you know, not everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet on. So if we go to the next slide and the one after that, if we first touch on business, here are some of the things that come to my mind when I think of sustainability within the wider business sector. I'm sure you recognise some, if not all of these, from the work that you do or the internships you've undertaken. We can look at something simple and within legislation like the ISO 14001 standard, which I would argue is, you know, a minimum environmental standard we should all be meeting. You then come to something a bit more progressive, like the B Corp certification, which if you haven't heard of, it's an ethical and environmental standard that companies can meet that essentially means you're doing the best you can to minimize your environmental impact and make your social impact positive. The company I work for currently is B Corp, and I think that's something I've discovered throughout my journey so far is the ethics and the environment are really important for me. So when I'm applying to future jobs, that's something I'm gonna look for as a minimum standard. We then come across something like carbon footprinting or accounting. Many companies now are trying to quantify the impact they have and looking to understand their full impact by including not just scope 1, not just scope 2, but ideally scope 3 emissions when they're reporting this data. That's not easy to do, but you know, people are moving forward and trying to do it. And this helps people to make decisions to reduce their carbon footprint. But I think this can be a double-edged sword because how do you approach that reduction of carbon footprinting? Of your carbon footprint? I would say you literally need to reduce the carbon you're emitting, but there's things like carbon offsetting and paying back your carbon in different ways, and it becomes an accounting exercise. So is this what was intended when schemes like carbon footprinting and carbon accounting was set up in order to make what is a positive change? Linking to this, we have the net zero targets that began in politics and have moved into business, which links well with carbon footprinting, and I won't say too much about that because I'm aware I'm probably talking too much already, as well as renewable energy. And this is a sector unto itself, obviously, but it's beginning to take part in business as well, as companies are looking to firstly offset their carbon or reduce their carbon, but also it's a really easy way to increase your green credentials. In the wider public, greenness is becoming much more important, so a really easy switch is to swap to renewable energy for a lot of businesses who are just starting that process. And then finally, we come to businesses where green is their brand. This is an image of the very famous campaign by Patagonia saying, "Don't buy this jacket," which is counterintuitive for a company that sells clothes. But the aim was to promote the idea of slow fashion. If you haven't had a look at what Patagonia is doing in detail, please do, because they are arguably leading that kind of green brand sphere. But there's a whole sector of business for which the greenness and the ethics are what is the selling point or the USP of the company. And that's really starting to be, as I said, more important because more people are starting to care, and it is a decision driver. There's lots of statistics that talk about the younger generation rating that as one of the top kind of 2 or 3 things that they look for when they're looking to buy products. So if we go to the next slide, this leads me nicely to a thought or question for you. Are what I just spoke about enough? These are measures designed for our sustainable or economic growth. But do we or should we be aiming for traditional economic growth at all? The exponential growth of the last 100 years, that kind of upswing that you see, has gotten us into the situation we are in now. So should we be redefining what we mean by growth? Should we be considering carbon and social capital when we balance our books to get a better idea of the impact beyond the monetary? Concepts such as donut economics, which I suggest that you Google because the founder will explain it much better than me, but it is really awesome. It's, you know, literally a donut, and the aim is to sit within the donut. If you fall within, you're below your minimum human rights. If you fall without, you're living beyond the mean for everyone to live within their human rights. And this is a really holistic way to look at the impact of decisions beyond the pounds and pence. So then we come to politics. And again, I'm no politician, so I will just say a few things for you to think about. If we go to the next slide, please. Sustainability has been much more on the agenda in the last 10 years. This is seen by the fact that it's become more mainstream. So companies like the BBC, who have moved it from their kind of, this is a concept of 2 sides and we have to show 2 differing opinions, onto their, this is a fact, so we don't have to debate the nitty-gritty of climate change. And that's been seen in the last kind of 10 years. So therefore, it's become much more important on the political agenda. Obviously, politics doesn't sit within a vacuum. All of these initiatives impact on every aspect of our lives. May that be business, may that be personal. But there are a few things highlighted on this slide that come to my mind when I think of sustainability in politics. So the Paris Agreement, pursuing efforts to minimise warming to ideally 1.5, but 2 degrees. And again, I think this is great. I think it's great that so many people came together, so many countries came together and were able to agree on something. But again, I think there's more. I think we can limit ourselves by saying 2 or 1.5. But does everyone have an understanding of what the very real changes in the world will be if we only hit 2, if we hit 1.5, and how that can therefore influence the energy with which you pursue these goals? We have the Sustainable Development Goals, which are, again, a really holistic approach that look at human rights as a minimum and sustainability as a maximum. And this is beginning to be embedded in business and education. I'm part of looking to see how sustainability can be embedded in engineering degrees, and these are one of the standards that we're looking to incorporate into that. But my understanding is we're not going to meet any of these goals. 17 goals, 169 targets, I think, by 2030. That might be a bit too negative, but we're not going to meet all of them. So my point is, what after that? Do we keep striving for that as a minimum? Do we set higher targets because we need to do more? And how does that work? We then come to things like the Green New Deal, which is only just taking off in the UK, but is obviously big in America, as I'm sure you know, and has a European and EU equivalent. So this looks at things like decarbonising the UK, creating secure jobs, transforming the economy, protecting and restoring environments, and promoting global justice. This is arguably, I would say, one of the most revolutionary ideas in kind of mainstream politics at the moment. There's more stuff going on out there. So what does this mean? And how is it actually going to affect change? And then finally, we come to Boris's recent 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution. I think it speaks volumes that a conservative political leader in a time when there's a lot of other things going on in the world has put it forward on his agenda, or, you know, said it's an important thing on his agenda, this green space and what it means. But if and how and if are we going to hold him to account to those things? And are they really enough and inclusive enough? As I think it was Joe mentioned, a just transition is important, inclusive enough for us to live in a world where it's better than it is now. And I think this is a lot about what my role as a Black and Green ambassador talks about, is we don't want to live in a world where it's exactly the same as it is now, but we just have an electric vehicle and, you know, solar powered house. That's not good enough for a lot of people. So I think the sustainable development goals are good at looking at a more holistic approach to make everything better. But things like the green industrial revolution, I feel, holds a little to be desired on the just transition element of it. But that may change. It's a very new plan. And finally, or not finally, but I will speed up. If we go on to the next slide, and the slide again, we look at sustainability in society. So what actions matter to the people? And this can influence up and down. So as we saw after Blue Planet, plastic was the most important thing to everyone. And we can see how much public desire has pushed for change in kind of no plastic and zero waste. Veganuary this year has had the most subscriptions ever. I can't think of the number off the top of my head, but it's also forced supermarkets and mainstream shopping facility, restaurants and supermarkets to change what they have. So that's been an influence by the people up. And then we look at things like Extinction Rebellion and the youth climate strike and realise that they've been able to influence quite substantially the political sphere. Whether you agree or disagree with a lot of what they do, they have managed to make an impact and put it on the agenda. Now the question is if they can manage to convert putting things on the agenda into actual change that you see on the ground. I just want to check I haven't. And then one thing I would want to say on this, it's important to realise that these small actions that happen in society look different for different people. And as I alluded to at the beginning of my talk, language matters. So people may not use the word sustainable, but that doesn't mean they aren't making choices that minimise their impact on the planet. In the UK, sustainability up until recent years in the mainstream, I think has been very much framed as a luxury, something additional you can do if you can afford to pay a little bit extra for your organic shopping, to use your local refill shop or to buy sustainable clothing. But a shift is beginning to and needs to continue to happen where sustainability is seen as fundamental and not in isolation as part of social justice, as has been mentioned. And allowing everyone to have access to everything they need. A prime example of this is looking at fuel poverty in the UK and not seeing that as a problem of building a coal mine, but seeing that as a solution for renewable energy. May that be community energy. In Bristol, we've just got funding for our community-run hydro station, which puts power into people's hands, which I think is a big part of solving a lot of the issues around climate change. So finally, on to the next few slides, if I have time.
Yeah, you're all good, Olivia.
Perfect. Up until now, I have been speaking from a kind of UK Eurocentric angle, but sustainability or green looks very different around the world. Sustainability isn't enough in a lot of places where life has already started to drastically change because of climate change. Why would you want to sustain this? We should be aiming to make it better. As you can see on that slide, Bangladesh is one of just many countries that are already seeing a growing number of climate migrants due to flooding. In South America, which is on the left-hand side of my screen, but it might be the right-hand side of yours, the women holding grain. This is a campaign called La Via Campesina, which is fighting for land rights around the Amazon. Indigenous communities and peoples of African heritage in South America are fighting for the right to have their land in order to make choices to be able to grow food sustainably or influence their systems. So it's a very different fight in different places. Stop the Mononganese is a campaign in the UK, and it's taking the government to court for ecocide and genocide. And it makes that link between colonialism and the extractive forces of the West and the state in which the planet is today, and the legacy that has, and the power that people have to influence their own surrounding in order to make these better choices for the planet. And that comes with the middle image that looks at environmental and racial justice and things as simple as the right to clean air. I was part of a campaign this weekend in Bristol. We have toxic air, illegal quality air in Bristol. So the right to have, that is an issue of climate change, air pollution, but it's also an issue of your human right, of social justice. And if you're thinking of something as simple as, is the air I breathe good enough for me to survive? That's a very different framing of the issue of sustainability of, can I afford to buy an electric car? Or can I, should I fly this year or try and get the train across Europe instead? So it's just looking at things from different angle and realizing as you approach things from different places, that can, even though the goal is common, you can go down a very different path and lead at a slightly different destination. So finally, with bearing all that in mind, what does sustainability mean to me? And if we move on, one more slide, that's perfect. Well, it's a starting point, not an end point. I think that's the most important thing for me to say. Sustainability should be the minimum standard, and we should be aiming for regeneration. When I was studying, I wanted to create a technology or a system that would save the planet or change the world. Build it and the people will come, was my opinion, but I don't think this is true anymore. The Committee of Climate Change has said some words to the effect of, all the technology we need to change the world exists, but people aren't, can't, or don't want to use it. So this is the problem we have now, behavior change. And I think for me right now, sustainability isn't that, it's regeneration. It's campaigns, it's doing things from the bottom and the top at the same time. It's community. I feel like if people feel like they have control and power over their place and their impact, they're much more willing to act in certain ways. Disenfranchisement is, in my opinion, a big part of the problem. And small actions. I would love to save the world with one thing, but I don't think that's possible. It's going to be a lot of small things that people do, like yourselves, that build to something more. And I think with that, you're also showing that you care. And when I say community, that is in your locality, but community, you know, we are a globalized planet now. Community is around the world. And you can learn from broader than the UK and the EU in all these small actions that you do. And I think there's a lot to be said from learning from countries like Colombia and Costa Rica that are doing really progressive things because they have to. And they have to do it now. They can't wait 5, 10, 15 years. I am from Dominica, and we had a hurricane a few years ago that was really devastating. And we've used ecotourism to really help build back what was lost. So that just shows how important the eco-friendly agenda is around the world and how powerful it can be to build. I hate to use this phrase because I feel like it's been overused in the COVID recovery, but to build back better. and see something more. So that is about all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Olivia. That was fantastic and such an eye-opening presentation. You're so inspiring, and I'm sure we'll be great friends, great minds think alike and everything. I'll ask you just a couple of questions. One of the which was quite interesting to start is that relating to kind of the credentials for organisations. In your opinion, do you think every business should achieve the bare minimum, for example, ISO 14001? Do you think everyone should be at this stage striving for that? And if not, or you could expand and maybe tell us the top tips on what you think a company should do to become more environmentally sustainable.
All the things I think people should do. So
Definitely.
I'm aware, so we have ISO standards at my current work, but we didn't, we encouraged our suppliers to have them, but we didn't have them in place at my old, at Lush. So I'm aware that for a small business particularly, things like ISO are audits, it's paperwork, it can feel like extra work. So in an ideal world, yes. And I feel like ISO can be, it's quite restrictive in a lot of ways, and doesn't apply to, it doesn't feel valuable to all businesses at the same time. So I feel like all companies should be abiding by a minimum standard, but I don't know if ISO is the one, and is going to have that payoff between time put in and value out. So I would say that's a yes and a no answer, isn't it, at the same time? I like things like B Corp, again, not perfect for everyone, but that's important, I feel, because it brings in the ethical side of things. So it promotes transparency as a form of accountability. And I think that's really important. And I think there's an element of the kind of self or public auditing of companies that happens now. You know, people are much more willing to call things out that they see as wrong, and that has very real impact for people. I've seen a lot of backlash for Oatly, the oat milk, and they're arguably very progressive since they were invested in by, I can't remember the big financial group, but that led to a boycott of products. And may you agree or disagree with the effectiveness of boycotting an oat milk company, it just shows there's power in the people. So I feel there might be a nice balance between kind of traditional auditing system and that kind of self and public accountability, but transparency is key to that.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Yeah, and I think, was it not with Oatly, they are even contributing to deforestation in Amazon. Maybe that's not as well managed as they're letting on. And it's definitely a question that actions speak louder than words. And I'm not sure if you agree with me in that you see a lot of organizations understanding that this green agenda is important and we should be making positive environmental changes to organizations, and that'll boost their reputation. But there's a lot of greenwashing going on, or people just claiming that they do this, but there's no actual certifications or evidence to show that this is what they're doing. Do you come across that quite a lot with any of your contacts or network, or just the wider world from your understanding?
Yeah, I think greenwashing is a big problem for sure, and I think there's a mix between people who are doing it intentionally and not, because there is not one global standard for things. Fair trade and fair for life, people use interchangeably, two very different certifications in reality. Do people understand the difference? At Lush, we looked a lot at the cruelty-free angle of this. There's lots of different certifications. None of them stand up fully. You know what I mean? There's a lot of misunderstanding. So greenwashing, a lot of it's intentional, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the time it's hard to find a certification that fits for you because there's not standardization. Part of me understands that because, as I've just said, sustainability and green means different things in different places. But in the meantime, how are consumers meant to know what's the best choice and what impact they're genuinely having? And I think this pushes back to looking at the locality of things. So I think Well, no, actually, I'm not going to say that because I don't think it's completely true. But I think it's just a really hard space to navigate at the moment, and I think I will hark back to transparency. So it might not be that we need more auditing and more official standards to cover every single little impact of what's, regeneration should look like, or of what sustainable development should look like, but we have to have a kind of overarching policy that forces people to be transparent, so then you can at least see all this stuff and make the decision, but not have to rely on an external audit that means, oh, this one's doing, not deforesting, but it is testing on animals and not paying people minimum wage. We can just, all that information is available and not be reliant on those auditing standards.
Yeah, no, that's a really good answer, and I completely agree. Is all businesses are different, and it's hard to pinpoint, the best way forward for each of them. There's not one answer fits all. On the note of kind of just a side note of what you were saying with accreditations and things, Bright Green Business, we, just to let all the attendees know, we offer green ticks, which is a kind of accreditation in 5 phases. And in the 5th phase, you get accredited to ISO 14001. And it's just a nicer approach than for SMEs, small, medium and large enterprises, as it's a phased approach, so it's a little bit more friendlier. We take a slower pace with it and actually make sure that all the paperwork and criteria is met through each phase, rather than one big lump meeting ISO 14001 and it costs thousands of pounds. So if you've got any questions about that, just let us know. But like Olivia said, there might be a different accreditation that would suit your organisation better. Now we're just waiting for the judges to return. That should just be any moment now. Just one final question, is that just a quick one, because I think they're coming back through now. What sustainability lessons do you think we have learned from the recent pandemic?
Whoa.
That's a quick question, but a huge question at the same time. Yeah, so if you could answer it quickly and then we'll move on, that'd be great. Thanks, sure. Olivia.
I think we've just learned that things that we didn't think were possible are. I don't think that people should have to sacrifice all the time, but we can make drastic changes if we need to. The pandemic has been hard for everyone in different ways, and I'm not saying we should continue to live in this state, but it just shows we can make changes for the greater good. And I think a lot of things around sustainability is locality, and appreciating your local environment, your local shop, at least within the UK, your local park. And I think we've just opened our eyes to what is in our immediate vicinity, and what is possible in a very short space of time. There's a balance for sure. I can't wait to leave the country and go on a holiday somewhere. So I'm not suggesting we all stop traveling or anything like that. But I think we've just shown the scale of achievement that is possible.
Okay, amazing, great answer. Thanks so much, Olivia. I could speak to you all day. Maybe we can grab a coffee once we're allowed and we'll continue chatting. Thanks so much. You can now just sit back and relax. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm quite conscious for time because I know we have run over due to technical issues and things like that. So the event will be recorded if anyone has any other meetings to attend, but try to stay with us. We should be only another 10 minutes or so. So I'd like to welcome back the judges. They must have had a very difficult job on their hands deciding. Prior to Olivia, we heard some impressive presentations earlier from 5 finalists, showcasing a range of projects that have made a huge impact for the environment and cost savings for their host organisation. Now, let's move on with Fiona. Fiona will outline the judging criteria, what they were looking for, who the winner is, and the runner-up. Whenever you're ready, Fiona, take it away.
Okay, so thank you very much to everybody that stayed with us on the call. It is absolutely worth it. The best gigs start late and go on late, and it was very important for us to take the full 20 minutes or just over to judge these awards. You made it very difficult for us, and that is exactly what you should be doing as very much as thought leaders of our future. So we mentioned it was a difficult task. It is every year. It is not getting any easier, which again is exactly the way it should be. But the judging criteria that we have looks at your performance on assignment. It looks at the success of the project for your host organisation. It also looks at the contribution to the advancement of technology, or indeed the environmental agenda. It looks at the quality of your presentation and your written materials today. And lastly, it looks at personal skills development and legacy. And if I may just dwell a little bit on that word legacy. For the judges today, the two buzzwords, if you like, were impact and influence. Never more important, arguably, in the circumstances that we find ourselves in 2021. So without further ado, on behalf of the judging panel, it gives me great pleasure to announce, first of all, the runner-up to the Most Enterprising Environmental Intern for 2021, and that is Kathleen Painter. Kathleen, can I invite you to say the briefest of words, apologies, on receipt of your runner-up's award, and then I will just give all on the call a little bit more information on why we made the decision we did today. Well done.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you, everyone, judges. It's an absolute honour to be commended. Just having the placement, getting the placement in the first place, and having the amazing opportunity to do the work that I did do and learn and grow as much as I have, and then get a permanent position. I mean, I feel like I'm the luckiest intern in the world. So thank you very much for this as well.
You are most welcome. I speak for all the judges here, Kathleen. When we're talking about these two words of impact and influence, you started with 2,000 users of the tool that EST use. That's now sitting at 9,000 users. But what's important for us to call out here is the fact that that tool has a potential to be used in every household in Scotland. So the impact is not insignificant at all. What we also wanted to commend you on particularly was that you really took the technical stuff, the technical requirements, and I do like the description of the maths bit in your stride, and really strove to understand the technical piece behind this customer-facing tool. We also particularly liked the brave move with your narrative of your presentation, and the brave move indeed to leave sunny South Africa for Scotland. When you did, we and the Energy Savings Trust are all the more richer for that decision, Kathleen, and that your piece of work and indeed your presentation will be of use for every intern going forward. So thank you very much. A difficult choice, but a worthy runner-up. So that leaves me, on behalf of the judges, to announce the winner of this beautiful piece by Scott Irvin, and to announce who the Most Enterprising Environmental Intern of 2020 is. And that is, unanimously for the judges now, Rowan Stanford. Rowan, if I can invite you to say a few words, please.
Thanks so much. That's fantastic. I just reiterate what an amazing opportunity it was. All the chances it's given me, all the skills it helped me to develop. That's given me an insight into something I wouldn't have been able to even dream about without this program. So it's been great. So thanks very much to everyone in the Bright Green Business team for organising it, for Karen and Rachel for helping me with all the tech issues this morning, to everyone at the team from government listening in. It's just great. Yeah, and anyone on the call, any businesses thinking about getting involved in the program or anyone thinking about applying, then I'd urge you to just go for it, because it's absolutely fantastic, and well done to everyone else as well who presented. So thank you.
Thank you, Rowan. And we talked, or rather I talked at the very beginning here in the criteria about this importance of impact and influence. And you were at the very heart, are now still at the very heart of Scottish Government policy and progress in respect of this agenda. And we cannot underestimate how important the Scottish Climate Change Plan and the update that you were directly involved in shaping is for Scotland. It is the blueprint for Scotland. So to have to be involved in that speaks huge volumes about you and your impact and your influence, and actually the trust that was given to you, Rowan, because of all those things that you clearly bring to the party. To brief at ministerial level is not an undaunting task. Or not a challenging task, and we're very fortunate to have Colin Beatty, MSP, on the call today who can attest to that. But in terms of our selection criteria, in terms of these two buzzwords for us this year of impact and influence, you are a worthy winner. Well done.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And wow, amazing, great news. I'm so happy for Rowan. You did absolutely fantastic. You're so lucky that you get this award. I'm so jealous. It'll look great if on the mantelpiece if you have one, or just do whatever you can sleep with it if you want. It's just so pretty. So you can it's definitely worthwhile. Good job. And well done to our runner-up, Kathleen Painter. Like Fiona said, the results and the legacy that you achieved for Energy Saving Trust will be continued on in the future. So very well done. Without a doubt, congratulations to all the finalists. I've stressed before, and I'll stress again, that this has been such a competitive programme. So for you to get firstly on the placement programme and work for an amazing organisation and achieve results, then become a finalist at the placement programme and present to, we've had over 80 people attend today, mix of businesses and other students and graduates and general public. To present in front of all them will hopefully land you in a good course for an environmental career in the future. Everyone will receive an award one way or another. After this call, we'll be in touch with you all to send out the appropriate certificates and little goodies and things like that. You'll also, let me just switch my slide. Also a massive thank you to the judges. Fiona, you just did fantastic there, sharing your thoughts and about our finalists, and obviously again with technical issues it's always been a struggle, but we got through it. Alison, you did great, and David, thank you for showing up, and Kevin, you know what it's like to be a finalist. It's stressful and your support is really appreciated. Guest speaker Olivia, you were fantastic. Thank you so much for presenting today. So interesting and eye-opening. I'm sure you'll have a lot of LinkedIn connections after this event. Colin Beatty, you've been always a great supporter. We hope to see you again next year and keep in touch with you in the coming months as well. And as well, thanks to all the audience for coming along and your patience and support to the finalists and the businesses who are working hard to achieve these environmental credentials by working on working on environmental projects, getting these things done within weeks and really taking the initiative. Thanks so much for coming along. And lastly, thanks to Karen behind the scenes doing a fantastic job making sure everything ran smoothly. You can't see her, it's always just being my lovely face that you've been seeing, but she is pulling her hair out and sweating, I'm sure, loads behind the scenes, but she's done absolutely fantastic. Judges and Olivia as well, we want to say a big thank you. You'll get a small token of thanks sent to you as well. Right, I'll just wrap up. Please join us again next year. Tell your friends, your colleagues all about how great the Environmental Placement Programme is, and get in touch with myself or Karen if you feel like having a graduate placement in 2021 will benefit you. See you all next year. Thank you so much. Bye.